Hello, my name is Jonathan Forster, and welcome to the Multi-Story Thinking Podcast. I'm an interior designer and educator. My job is to improve quality of life and productivity by helping people to create beautiful and practical spaces to live and work in. The Multi-Story Thinking Podcast takes an educational slant to the interior design world. So sit back, relax, as we help unravel the mysteries of interior design. Ken Mackay is an architect and senior partner of London-based design studio Mackay and Partners. The studio creates buildings, interiors and products and collaborates widely with designers and developers across the globe, working in the sectors of hotel, high-end residential, corporate headquarters, refurbishment and master planning. I talked to Ken via Zoom in early 2021. In this episode, we discover the inspiration for Ken's holistic approach to design, how mixing with other students helps develop an understanding of materials and processes, the importance of getting to know your client's perspective and developing good relationships with planners, and the role St. John's Restaurant played in the career path of Scottish designers. Well, thanks for joining me, Ken. How are you doing? Are you all right?
Yeah, quite. Christmas, New Year.
Yeah.
A lot happening. And obviously the inevitable happens and we're back to where we started, yeah.
That's right. Last time we spoke, we weren't in lockdown. Are you in an office then, or you are working from home at the moment?
I'm working remotely at home. All the guys are spread around all over the country, Spain, down by you, outside London, all over the place.
Yeah. And that's working okay, is it? Apart from the lack of social
a few teething issues, which we're trying to sort out, but basically, yeah, it's fine. It's just me spending a lot more time on Zoom and a lot more time red penning things and doing all that kind of stuff that you didn't have to do before.
It's quite exhausting, isn't it? Do you find that hard work? Particularly when you go from one to another, there's no decompression time.
Well, we're doing a pitch over just before Christmas. We're trying to get it finished before the Christmas close. Inevitably, it drags into the following week. But it was just working with the external D&B contractor, their consultants, our team. So there's about 20 people trying to keep in the loop, even doing Dropbox and all that kind of stuff. It still falls between gaps.
So I suppose in a real meeting, you'd be able to tell whether someone was missing, wouldn't you? Because they wouldn't be there. Often you can turn up.
It's which version are we working on, and have you read the previous emails? And
which inevitably most people haven't.
No, precisely.
I first came across you as a company back in, it must have been the early 90s, when you were Harper Mackay then, I guess. Is that right? And I think my interest, I was a furniture designer graduate. I was trying to get into interior design work, and you were doing a lot of retail, or I noticed some retail.
It's kind of interesting that you focus on your career pans all of these different sectors and different periods of time. I don't think you preempt it. It's just you're in the right place at the right time and something clicks. So we hadn't done a lot of retail work before we got into retail, and then suddenly we had a big run of it. It's just kind of like one thing after the other.
Was that just meeting a client and something happening? Then you
Yeah. It's like all the ad agencies we did prior to that was, I had a friend who was in advertising. I was a frustrated ad man. He was a frustrated architect. So, his first project or client, he became the owner of the business, and they kind of invite you in for drinks. Next thing you know, you're redesigning their agency for them. Then they went Richard Branson as a client for Virgin Atlantic. It all takes off from there. And suddenly I'm now doing 10 advertising agencies and working for Richard Branson out of a chance meeting. But I think it's just being in the right place, right time, saying the right things, and being in groove with what else is current and what's being discussed.
And was you doing a lot of interiors? Was that because you weren't doing buildings then, or?
No, if you go back, I graduated Royal College at 81 and went to work for my tutor Jeremy Dixon on the Royal Opera House, which was a phenomenally large project to be running at 24 years old, 25 years old. And then we grew the office from 3 to about 30, and then worked on the planning application. And I realized very quickly that the Royal Opera House, the great and the good, didn't have the money to pay for the project. So you ask the question is, how are we going to fund this? And they go, oh, don't worry, we have a shortfall figure. And I said, what's a shortfall figure? I don't really understand what that is. Oh, we don't have enough money to build the project, but we'll get funding from somewhere or other. And lo and behold, 5 years later, it was the lottery funding stepped in and basically billed them out and paid for the project. So that's why it happened. But in the interim, I'd left because I knew the planning application would be delayed, and it took 5 years to get to that point, and I wasn't going to hang around that long. I had itchy feet to do other things and get on with more and more projects. But I think it's the whole thing, working on big scale projects, you assume you're going to be doing them all of your life, and then you realize that actually most clients have small scale projects. And one of the things that drove me was that a lot of architects of the 80s and prior to that, I mean the great and the good now, only dealt with the outsides of buildings, not the inside of buildings. And I'd always had a more holistic approach of doing both. So the inside and the outside work together, and they were seen as one concept rather than two concepts.
Where did that come from? Because was that taught to you, or just was
No,
it?
No, it wasn't taught. I think it's just a kind of general interest. You can. I mean, most architects can scale up and do both, but I think a lot of the time, a lot of them get stuck on facade detailing or structural composites or something. It's not doing both together. Whereas as a kid, I got brought up on the building site. My dad was QS. A friend of his was the contractor, and I used to be doing brickies, hands, carpentry, clearing up around building sites the whole time. So you're inside buildings, outside buildings, and it's just being able to put things together and doing joinery and understanding how that goes together. Therefore, when you're doing interiors, you know how to build something.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I think you've got, or what I sort of looking back actually on photographs from your website and back catalogue, and also my memories of when I first encountered you, there was a sort of sensitivity to the interiors which was quite sophisticated and well worked through, which often you don't see.
Thank you very much. No, I think it's something that was a passion that we wanted to make sure things worked. I mean, the Royal College I was fascinated by. Austrian design at the time, Hoffmann, Adolf Loos, all of those type of things, and they were very much about buildings, decoration, interiors, product, glassware, the whole gambit. So it's about doing everything. Some are a bit more extreme in their views about what interior should be and what their clients should be wearing, but never quite got that far. Designing slippers for my clients.
Yeah.
Much, yeah.
So slipper is the final finishing touch.
Yeah, the ones you have to wear to the bathroom as opposed to the ones you wear in the bedroom, yeah.
It's all in the detail then, isn't it? But that did the architectural course give you that confidence to do that, or the skills to do that? Or
I think that was more, I did my BA at Canterbury, which was an art college, so you mingled with lots of interesting people who weren't doing architecture, were doing fashion, graphics, a whole stack of other things. And then really, I decided that the upper school wasn't for me, and I had a tutor in the upper school called Bryn Ritchies, who used to work for Jim Sterling. He said, Ken, there's only one place I think you should go is the Royal College. So I'll call this man and we'll get you in, kind of thing. And I submitted late, got in, and loved it. It was fantastic. It was a very, in hindsight, elitist, small group of people. Normally the entry level was probably 10, 15 a year or something. For some bizarre reason, our year was about 8 to 10 people. A couple of people dropped out. So I had 3 years of that. And as you know, the Royal College it's a wonderful tall building. If you stay at the top and don't mingle with other people, you don't learn very much. So I spent most of my time in all the other departments apart from architecture, getting to know how product went together, how furniture worked, how you make glass, how you did all those other things. So that's a lot of the sensitivity and understanding of how you put things together.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the Royal College as I remember it. I'm not sure what it's like today.
I don't think it's quite the same anymore. It's a bit more business driven.
You're talking about your approach to designing spaces. Is there a different approach to how you design buildings?
Not difficult, but kind of interesting question. I mean, in my career, you've been involved in doing lots of competitions and bigger buildings, but in reality, you only end up actually physically building probably 10% of them. So to get things through planning, getting it constructed and getting it delivered, it's it's quite a struggle. So I think it's about perseverance and having a very strong idea or vision at the beginning of what the essence of the building should be. I mean, the best example of that would be the Minrace Hotel we did in Aldgate. We were trying to buy the building for an operator. They didn't want to buy the freehold. We were bringing the client into the UK from Germany. Another developer bought it. We made an introduction to the two parties. So he bought it, then did a pre-let to the operator, and we got appointed, really acting for both of them. But it's kind of like how they got their vision together about to do the project. One was purely commercially driven about how much can I get on the site, and the other one just wanted to have lots of bedrooms. And I think with my mix of discussion and agreement with the planners in the City of London, we were able to get a building that was probably twice the height of anybody thought it could be at the beginning. We thought we might get 6-7 stories. We ended up with 11, and twice the density. But it was kind of put forward through an urban context, scale of what other developments are happening around, looking at the view angles from City Hall and so forth, and then working out with the materiality and the concept that it wasn't going to be a budget hotel. The City of London didn't want any more holiday inns or hub hotels or anything like that, so they wanted something that was a bit more design orientated. And luckily, the planner I was working with, the city had transferred from Westminster, and we'd met working on St Martin's Lane Hotel. It's like your credentials follow you, and he goes, "Oh, you're new, different, and yes, we'd like some of this." And then we came up with this crazy idea of using corian as the outside cladding material. And the senior planner thought this is brilliant, a material never had heard of before. He said, "But is this not kitchen sinks?" And I said, "You can put it on the outside of buildings." And that's how he pitched it. The City of London father is about approving planning. He said, "We're doing a building that is made out of kitchens, basically, kitchen sinks."
The novelty of that sounds good. And I've seen that building, actually. It's quite impressive the way the light passes through the skin, as it were.
Yeah, so it's a very translucent kind of 24/7 building. Yeah. Changes from white to a dynamic building in the evening.
You're hinting at that sort of relationship with the planners and timing, really. It's getting the right people at the right time, responding to the opportunities.
I learned very quickly from Jeremy Dixon that you have to have a good relation with the planner, and it's a bit of education on both sides. They have their agenda and you have yours. It's a question of how you can talk them around or lead them in the direction that this might be the right resolution to a problem. So I think when I worked at Clifton Nurseries, which was a kind of conservation area in Maida Vale, how we got that through and developed with them was really working with the planners from very early days, and that followed on with the Opera House and so forth and all the other projects we were working on. So it's really getting a relationship with the planner, knowing exactly what's happening, and there's a certain sense of confidence to deliver something that's going to be different and exciting. And that's what happened with the City of London as well. I think they have a view of probably 20 architects they like working with. If you come with 5 applications a year, they'll probably say these are formulaic, but if you come with 1 or 2, or the odd, they get a bit more excited by that. Something different, something more interesting.
Breaking the kind of mold a little bit, that isn't it, of what's expected.
I think it's also to do with, Peter Wynne-Rees, who was the senior planner, it was about patronage as well. It was actually about leaving a legacy of new, interesting buildings that weren't all steel and glass. It was about actually bringing new architects into the city, doing different qualitative pieces of architecture in a different way. Few follow-ons from that, but it's interesting that there's still a lot of glass going up in the city.
What's your thought about style then, in terms of architectural style?
Well, I think what's happened during lockdown first time round, and now more so now, I think, is you get to realize that there's a lot more new agendas on the table than what there were 5 years ago. So I think sustainability and all of those issues and what we're going to do, what is the workplace going to be like post-COVID? Everybody kind of said, "Oh, we'll be back to normal. We'll all be doing exactly the same thing." And I don't think we will, in many, many levels and many different ways. I think with this new strain that's come through, the government have actually rechanged their views on ventilation from office buildings. They'll have to be improved even beyond what they said in December, because it's now it's a much more virulent spread and more contactable. So what do? You change the buildings. Naturally ventilated buildings have been around for a long, long time. But developers haven't embraced that completely. Some have. Derwent Valley have done so in quite a few of their recent developments. But I think there's some more things that kind of come into the mix that weren't there beforehand. And I think the whole problem with city architecture or urban architecture is a lot of it's driven by development yield figures and all those kind of things that actually don't bear a lot of relevance to what's really required. So I think a lot of that gets shaken up and changed.
You've got quite a good grasp, I think, of the holistic approach to development, and in terms of you're not just interested in what it looks like. You're into the numbers. You understand the economics. And
well, I think that's also one of my drivers has always been kind of seeing it from the client's perspective before they've been involved in it. So therefore, it's how you pitch something to somebody and say this is the right site, right building for you. It matches your profile, your brand, your numbers, what your expectations are. We work with lots of European hoteliers who want to try and come into the UK market. We're working with an apartment group from Amsterdam at the moment, who we looked at a portfolio in Bloomsbury just before Christmas, which is a whole series of Georgian old, dare I say it, kind of bed and breakfast hotels around King's Cross. And you think, it's a really scruffy bag of buildings, which it is in reality, but actually they have a presence and they have an order and room size and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you start putting suite bathrooms in and bigger things, it just changes the whole thing. So we came to the conclusion that it wasn't effective for them. It wasn't really answering their brief, and we've canned that. We're now looking at something else. But it's just to do with the skill of the building and what suits their needs and how you work with it.
Where have you learned that from? I guess you've been
over time, grey hair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Look at me.
Grey hair.
Yeah. But that approach to sustainability in an economic sense is really quite important, I think, in terms of helping a business succeed.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic, and I think a lot of people haven't embraced it properly yet. I did several webinars on how you embedded carbon in buildings and how you deal with it, and obviously not knocking buildings down and refurbishing and extending the existing frames, recladding, better insulation, all that kind of things is a better way to approach it. But in some situations, you are with virgin green brownfield sites, and you are building new buildings or whatever. But it's just really having the tools to assess all of that properly from day one. And I think a lot of it's sat outside the architect's remit. And some practices are now doing their own software that will set up and actually understand what they're dealing with from day one and all the options they can put into play, without bringing all of their MEP consultants and other people in saying, does this work, does this not work? I think it's really pulling people together and kind of saying, we need to know from day one, what is our carbon on this site? What is the carbon with the building? How can we improve it? What's the life costing of this, and how do we deal with it ongoing? I think those are conversations that should be happening up front, not halfway through the design process. They should be happening before you have design concepts worked out.
So that's like a reordering of the briefing priorities, isn't it? To emphasize those at the start.
Yeah, I think it's also about what's important. I mean, when we found the Minories Hotel, the developer wanted to have BREEAM accent from day one, as we had a score sheet the whole way through. It was something that drove the project, but it was a financial driver, so he could actually then package the building up and sell it on very quickly. It's something that's kind of de-risking the development appraisal. Whereas I think you need to have more integrity and have that sorted out at the beginning, and so it's a long life view of your portfolio and the building materials used. I mean, that was done on that particular project because they wanted to resell the building on with that accreditation, which de-risked the development effectively. But I think holistically, that's something we have to embrace on every project, so that make sure that basically those values are embedded before you start designing, and then you can maximize that through the design process and deliver a building that performs much, much better.
And then the interior fit out is the kind of icing on the cake of that, really, in terms of the process.
Well, the whole thing is you have to have the same philosophy about interior fit out as you do for the building. We've just done this tender pre-Christmas for a council, which came with 5 pages of form filling in to make sure that all the products we're supplying were sustainably sourced and passed all the regulations and so forth, and you had to give a carbon footprint calculation of what you're doing in the fit out. That's part of a tender. That's not even actually designing it.
Yeah, before you've even won the work.
Before you even designed it, really.
That's quite a lot of work then, isn't it, to pull that together?
Well, I think it's rather over the top. I think you could say you embrace principles when you're pitching for work at that level, but to actually provide calculations was a bit of an ask, to say the least.
Yeah.
But we could do it, so we provided it, just saying it as a summary as opposed to a guarantee at this stage until we worked our way through the project.
Yeah.
Those were kind of goals that were set, as it were.
Do you do many of those tenders? I've had experience of them in the past few years, and they're particularly fiddly, I think, to get right.
Well, it's like everything. The more you do something, the better you should get at it. When you debug one of those tenders, we've now got a scoring matrix that you can bring down. So you can work out what percentage they're awarding to each of the parts of the tender. And you find out that the design component is probably saying 40% initially, but then when you work in with everything else, that kind of comes down to about 20% or 19%, because most of it's to do with sustainability or to do with your methodology about something else. So yeah, it gets filtered down. So this particular tender we just finished, there were 5 headline scoring points, which then transpired into about 27 other percentages across the whole thing. So it just got all watered down. So if you hadn't filled all the things in, or you haven't had the right number of words, yeah, that almost was as much as what the design content was.
Yeah, it's slightly dispiriting from a designer's point of view, isn't it, when you realise that actually your bit within the project isn't really that important in terms of.
Well, when it comes to, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it's when you get to public works and accountability and all that kind of stuff, they've got to jump through those hoops to show that they've tendered it properly and openly, and it's not kind of any bias to any particular tender. But in reality, it becomes so much form filling that you actually kind of realize that they're just after a number, and you can do it within a number of weeks. End of story. Or we've done one similar, so here's something you can compare it to.
That's the kind of common regulated end of the spectrum. We've worked on projects where it's been a bit more fluid, and I'm thinking back to the days of Portal when it was almost like we were planning it as we were going. We were on quite a short lead-in time.
Yeah, that's the other side of my skill set, which is kind of your architect turned owner, developer, fit-out contractor.
Yeah, I mean, that was quite an exciting process. I don't suppose the kind of litigious, nervous people in the world would like that route, but it was quite effective.
If memory serves me right, the listed building officer from Islington Council wasn't too pleased. We were ripping out his listed partitions. We kind of realised that they'd been ripped out once before and put back as something to match.
They weren't listed. They were listed, but they weren't original. Yeah,
they weren't original. Yes, that was an amusing thing.
Yeah,
so I remember taking my daughter to school to quickly run around and appease him, and saying we weren't not serving injunctions on us not to close the site down, etc., etc. So you just have to work the whole way through with them. But it was an interesting project where we worked very quickly together. Very hands-on to get things done in a shop-fitting manner.
Yeah. I think that's the one end of the spectrum. It's a bit of a it was creative and exciting, I think, and it was quick actually, and we were on a very short lead time.
Well, the outcome was very successful as well.
And I did enjoy that project because we somehow managed to get site meetings just at the time when the kitchen were catering, doing their prep, for the opening. And it was rude not to try a few of those nice bits of food, wasn't it? But
free samples.
Free samples, yeah. What do you enjoy about the process? I mean, it's such a big process, isn't it? What you're involved with on different scales. Where do you get your enjoyment?
Over the years, the things the project that I would cite as being the most exciting, where I've had most control and most involvement in, was the Merck's Rona headquarters in Geneva, which by London sizes is like running fitting out the whole of Canary Wharf Tower. It's the scale of it. But we did it with an office in London of about 4 people, and worked with international collaborators from Chicago, Geneva, Zurich, Italy, all over around the world. It was like a Tower of Babel in terms of languages, but it was run in English, and the client set it up fantastically well, had a very good project management in-house team. Everything worked like clockwork. It was very Swiss, delivered, and it was a very high-quality project. And we did that over 2 years, and I think if I was doing it in London, it would probably take 5, and probably a team of about 20 people, and I would have lost a lot of money on it. Whereas doing the speed we were doing it at and flying in and out of Geneva on a weekly basis, it was extremely profitable, very enjoyable, and a very, very good outcome. The client was very, very pleased with it.
Is that combination of client, location, and?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the client's ambition for the project. He was bringing 6, 7 buildings in Geneva into one campus that he'd bought. He was doing it from a property development side. He was doing it from a business growth side. As a biotech firm, they wanted to be the biggest in Switzerland, doing lots and lots of new products. He just won the America's Cup yacht racing for Lungi, his private company. He was very dynamic, but very totally organized and totally knew what he was trying to do. And I think that embedded itself the whole way through the whole team and all of the contractors and subcontractors beyond that. So it's like if you're trying to get pieces from Italy, it's a 2-hour drive back to Italy. So there's no excuses that it would take you 3 weeks to get something sorted out. It was sorted out the next day. So it was amazing. It was very, very good, actually.
You mentioned the small team. Managing a project of that scale, the importance of who you're working with, your collaborators, must be paramount.
Well, Murphy Yan were the architects from Chicago who were doing the outside of the building. And they had one senior partner working on it who spent 1 week a month in Geneva. And we'd spend that week with them, and then we'd be back and forward a couple of times with the client working on internal things about their organization and workplace. Yeah, it was seamless, actually. And because we'd hired a team who used to work for Murphy Yan in Chicago, who were in London, who knew all the drawing layers and styles. We both worked in MicroStation. And from Murphy Yan's perspective, they said, it's like we've got an extended office in London because you know exactly what our layers and drawings are. So there's no changes, there's no red penning. We just know exactly what's going on. And because Chicago was 6 hours behind, we'd finish in the evening. You'd ship all the drawings to Chicago. They'd be back on in front of you in the morning. So you didn't lose any time. That whole international thing worked really well. Pretty full-on pace, but it was done by senior people around the table who respected each other and actually got things done. So there was no egos, no bullshit. We got things resolved very quickly.
And the process of developing the designs, how much of that are you getting hands-on involved with, or what's your role within the team?
I've always been the design lead within the business, even if we were 100 people. I've always been trying. I try and keep at the forefront of that. I mean, the problem we had with Harper Mackay was that we grew so quickly that you end up being a kind of business manager as opposed to a designer. So we had lots of other very talented design people in the business who subsequently have all now running their own businesses and doing very well. I mean, Steph McDonald, who did my house with me, has just got a CBE in the honours list this year as 6A architects. 6A have done really well. Yeah. So, and it's nice to see that through that whole process, there's lots of talented people that have come through the business, learned something, and have gone on to succeed in their own way.
Yeah. Do you think you've got a kind of role as a mentor for those kind of people who are coming in?
I think there was a lot of inspiration. We had a very strong attitude about what we were trying to do. And I think a lot of the business acumen or attitude was passed down to quite a few of them. A large proportion of them were Scottish, surprisingly. But I was watching a BBC iPlayer thing the other evening. There's a friend who I haven't seen in 30 years. You probably know her, Janice Kirkpatrick, Ross Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Graven Images in Glasgow. She's trying to save the Clydesdale horse from extinction. And I didn't realise that, I just watched the documentary, that she used to ride horses and ponies before she went to art college in Glasgow when I met her when I was doing all of the Ted Baker and Liberty stuff up in Glasgow at the time. And the same thing as I did. I did exactly the same thing. You give it up at college because you can't afford it and you don't have any time, you don't have the place to put them. So you come back to it in later life, and her and Ross have got a whole farm full of Clydesdale horses. It's quite interesting as their part-time hobby. It looks more like their business than anything else.
That's one of the things that I learned quite a few years ago, was your passion for riding. It's not the sort of thing you come across, in general day-to-day city living, is it? But
No.
Have you been able to pick that up recently? It'd be good for lockdown, wouldn't it? You could just take them out for a ride.
The closest one here, the City of London Police Force, around the corner of Wood Street. They come past me every morning. They're being run down because they've sold the building for redevelopment. No, the passion I have with the horses is that I'd like to be able to do it again. So 4 years ago, I was reading the Sunday Times "Where Do You Want to Be" kind of thing, and it was like a double-page spread. Comportas, the New Hamptons, and photographs of an older gentleman riding a very beautiful white stallion horse with 4 other horses trailing behind him down a beach in Portugal, going through the Atlantic Ocean. I said, that's for me. So I packed up my bags and went to Comporta the next weekend to go and sample of it. And I phoned this guy up and I found his name was called Jose. And I said, can I book a lesson? Not a lesson. I would like to ride a horse every morning for a whole week. I'm down here for a whole week doing some things. And I said, really? Most people do it for one day on their holiday? You want to do it every week? So I did. And we got on really well. Transpired his girlfriend was a property developer and introduced me to lots of properties. And that's why subsequently we're now looking at doing an eco-resort in Comporta at the moment, where eventually we'll have a stable and horses and do all of that kind of stuff.
That can be you, that guy on the beach now. That's great.
That was every time I go down there, that's what we do. We go galloping along the beach. It's fantastic.
And the Scottish connection, what is it about your company that Scottish designers like?
Well, both David Harper and I are Glaswegians.
Yeah.
We met I met in London. I don't have a Glasgow accent. My filtration in Northern Ireland, America, and Australia, and London. So it's a bit Anglified. But I think we talked a lot up at the Macintosh, and Macmillan was a great supporter of us at the time. And it's kind of like boys doing good, leaving the town and going to London and having a good practice. So consequently, you got lots of graduates wanting to come to London. You were the first port of call because you're Scottish, you will get in, sort of thing. And it did help. It helped even more if they bought us a pint in St John's on a Friday evening. That became our normal recruitment space.
Yeah, but they've got I think they've got a slightly different system in Scotland, haven't they, in terms of education? Often 4-year trajectory of courses, and just seem to be a little bit more, they've got a bit more time to develop, I think.
Well, I think it's like any art college or architectural college. They change. One decade the AA is the best place. The next year it's the Royal College. That's the Bartlett thereafter. It's the Macintosh, or it's Harriet Watt was never on my radar at all. But they've had good years as well. Edinburgh Art College. So, I mean, it varies. It depends who the tutors are and what's happening, what the agenda is. But I think, everybody has their good times at college and you have fond memories of it.
Yeah. And I think there's a sort of art school vibe up there as well.
Very much so. The art school was, Mr. Harper used to run all the bands out of the art college bar.
Plans for the future. You talk about the property development becoming more of a kind of part of that. Is that how you see your role developing?
I think it's more a personal kind of ambition, because over the years I've probably made as much money, if not more money, buying and selling, developing houses than I have doing architecture. So I think the whole way forward is, I've got this scheme for Comporta. If I can get it off the blocks and get the funding that we're trying to find at the moment over the next 2 to 5 years, then that would be a serious investment and a very large project to be involved with and run or partially own. So therefore, I think it's somewhere you realise that rather than waiting for somebody to come knocking on your door and saying, here's a job and we'll pay you a small fee, and then they run away with all the money, which has happened many, many times in my career, that you kind of realise, well, maybe it's the right time to do it yourself. Stick your neck out a bit further and see how you can get it off the ground. We're working with investment people from New York at the moment and a whole range of other things. So it's about bringing all your global stuff together and trying to get an interesting team to work on it and deliver the project.
And is there a sense of that leaving a legacy that's important to you think?
No, it's not a legacy. It's about just me enjoying my older years and having a bit of sunshine. Yeah. I think the whole problem with the world at the moment is that everybody assumes if you have to live and work in London. And I think what lockdown's taught me is very much that as I've worked globally, I've worked in New York for 4 years. I've been in Australia. I've traveled with Branson for about 3 years around the world. Pre any internet connections or days of faxes on big heavy phones, and the first computers. Now it's all so easy. I mean, it's just basically it's a Zoom calls. You can be talking to anybody in the world, doing exactly as we're doing now, as I have been doing for the last 6 months. It doesn't make any difference. So it doesn't matter where you are, really. I think the face-to-face thing is special, and it's good to happen, but if we can't do that, we might as well just go and do something else. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I've always had this adage of my dinner table is that any successful project or business venture is you draw a table, circular one preferably, and put 6 or 7 people around it and go, right, what are you adding to the debate or the business proposition or whatever, what do you bring to the table? And if you don't last 3 courses, you're out, basically. It's very much our employment regime at Harper Mackay was that if you didn't last 6 weeks and you weren't running your project, you were out. If you got handed a big project or a small project, didn't really matter, but you had to be able to get on with your colleagues and work together as a team and deliver something.
You're handling a lot of responsibility then, which must be empowering if they have the confidence to go with it.
Yeah, well, that's what happens on big projects anyway, so it's an important thing to do. I think that's probably why we've collaborated with so many other architects over the years as well. I mean, I've really enjoyed working in Milan with Studio Archeola on the project we did in London. I worked with Michael DeLucchi, Nick Buick in Milan as well. So there's a whole range of things. Marcel Wanda is doing the Mandarin Duck Store in London. It's nice meeting other people who have different agendas, working with concrete on Citizen M. There's the whole range of things. So it'll be much more interesting than having everybody in your own studio. It's nice to branch into other studios and be around and engage with other things.
Those kind of arrangements where you're working with quite well-known collaborators, how do they get set up? And you must be open to that.
It's generally personal recommendation or an introduction from somebody. I mean, I started working with Marcel because he knew Ross Lovegrove. I know Ross Lovegrove from college. He said, Marcel's got a project in London. Can you help him? I didn't know what it was, a small project, a big project, whatever. You have a first conversation or a coffee. Then we met on site and said, well, it's this. And I was in Bologna 2 days later meeting the client and working together over a weekend to try and pull the thing together to get back online because they were behind program by about 2 months. And we got things working. With Patricia Archeola, we were doing a development on Rosebery Avenue site, which I brought in for Moroso and suggested that it might be suitable for their showroom. So we did the showroom for Moroso. Patricia was doing the interior. We had to work together with her team to put it in. So, there's no friendship there, but I'd met her previously. We knew of each other. So, 2 years later, you got a phone call saying we have a project in London. Can you help us? And that transpired to be 158 apartments and a whole amenity space, and a very, very large project, which was they needed some serious help with. So we worked on that for 2 years with them.
So it's that's that building that relationship, and it comes back, And that's sort of lots of designers can't cope with that sort of clash of personalities, or they want to be.
I never see it. There's never a clash. I mean, that's the kind of reverse way around. Because I was lucky enough to go to all the Milan design fairs. When I was at the Royal College and after the Royal College, and even somebody said to me, it was like watching some Sotzas furniture being sold. I think it was David Bowie's auction of all of his bits and pieces, and he's got a large Memphis collection. I was there at the opening party. I remember all these pieces being launched. And through all the people I knew at Milan, I knew all of these people, so it's kind of very bizarre. Michael DeLucchi's piece and Matteo Tan and all those kind of things. And because you were around that Milan Brit set for so many years, we all know each other. So Ron Arad, Jasper Morrison, Mr. Irvine very well. You got to know all that furniture crowd. So therefore, it's kind of furniture, interiors, product, architecture. They all kind of go together.
Is that still possible? I mean, the discussions I'm having at the moment with colleagues is that in lockdown they can't even get out to meet people, and their traditional routes of getting work are drying up. But
Well, I think this format is the only thing you're left with, quite frankly. You've got to work the machines, pick up the phone to people, and talk to them,
Yeah.
and try to get things done. I mean, the Yates project I'm working with at the moment was purely, I met them 2 years ago. We've kept in contact. We've looked at a couple of development options. I talk to them every 3 months, and then this portfolio thing popped up on my radar. You flick it to them and say, "Is this of interest?" Yes, it's of interest. Let's look at it. Suddenly it goes from no work to potentially millions of pounds worth of work. It doesn't happen every week, but if it happens twice or three times a year, you're doing okay. It's how you bring all of that to the table. I think the whole problem is a lot of people might say you've always been a commercial architect, or you have a commercial business. Harper & Carver, very successful commercially, and you think, well, actually, yes and no. We sought the work we wanted to do, and you go out there and find it. And it's different ways of kind of thinking it through, but we're not doing it for nothing. So therefore, you want to get a reasonable return on it. And then you realize that's dried up. The advertising agency have got no more money. Retail's definitely got no more money. The hospitality sector is probably going to go through exactly the same thing. It's diminishing. Everything's diminishing at the moment. So it's kind of working out who will be spending money in the next 2 to 3 years. It'll be healthcare, the government, infrastructure, all those other things, and you kind of go, well, I haven't done any of those before. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, it was a big rush to do schools. We've never got involved in doing schools. And, that'll all come back round again. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that works.
Does that worry you that you haven't had experience, or do you think you've got enough experience to be able to tackle any type of genre?
I'd be arrogant to say yes, but I think we've got enough depth and knowledge to kind of deal with everything. There's no guy said to me, well, why can you do hotels if you do offices? And I said, well, there's not much difference between an office and a hotel. Hotels are becoming more like offices, and offices are becoming more like hotels. There's a total transference of ideas back and forward. Schools are exactly the same thing. Hospitals are much more specialist. But yeah, there are other types of hospitals around, and I think co-living and aged living, all of those type of things. I think the idea of being over 50 now and being looked after in a world that might swipe you down with a virus in the next 10 years, that's going to change care homes. It's going to change a lot of stuff, and the whole retail frontage and high streets, that will all have to change. And it's a question of what that becomes and how we manage it.
There is some exciting times in design terms ahead,
Yeah.
For us designers, but yeah, the answers aren't quite within sight, really, with the changing landscape.
Well, the problem, that's why I'm saying we're commercial, is that it's been led by the property development investment firms and pension funds and estate agents who set what they think the yields are based on a certain amount of specification, and that specification never stretches much from a vanilla box. Basically, if you want to do something a bit more avant-garde, you end up doing it for owner-drivers, basically. It's not for pension funds. So, luckily we've had lots of owner-drivers we've had to deal with all of our life. They come with their pain and their gain, but they're fun people to work for. The thing about collaboration is important, because I think it's not all glamour stuff. It's actually I think it's the backbone of any design studio working successfully. And I think it's about having the right people in the studio. We've always had good people, and it's a question about how you can get more good people. That's and get the right people. When you at the time you don't think they're great, but then when they leave and you find out they're actually fantastic, or they've learned something, they've listened to you. It's when people show themselves and actually kind of take responsibility. And I think looking back at my career, I took responsibility very early young on the practices I worked for, the practices I worked for, and I learned a lot very, very quickly, and it kind of it stood me in good stead, as it were. Nothing stands still. That's the one thing we learned about the retail in the 90s. It didn't last much longer than the 90s. We gave it a shelf life of 5 to 10 years. In reality, it was 3 to 5. If it lasted that long, all the Muji stuff we did has all disappeared. It's, all kind of comes and goes. And the interesting thing with Ted Baker is that the inspiration behind the initial ideas lived through the client, who then had his own internal team doing the extension of what we started. But it's kind of like gone one way, now it's heading off in a different direction.
You've set it off, and that was your initial vision, I suppose. The
Well, I think it was that we had a very small team working on it with the owner and a couple of other people, some very good graphic designers, the Why Nots, and ourselves, and we delivered what was something then different and inspiring and challenging. But it was done at a pace. It was done at a kind of time at the market that didn't have anything. So we set out to try and kind of ruffle feathers and do things differently. And I think it's a bit like, it's not a word we would have used in those days, but it's disrupting the industry.
Any time when the frame of reference is shifted is good in terms of creating design innovation. I think what we're seeing now is the rules are changing, but we haven't worked out how to design for it yet. So
yeah, I mean, it's like, Jeremy Marston's RCA research course. They look into this stuff all of the time. What's the future proofing of innovation and how you get things more accessible? All of those kind of good things. And it's interesting how I think product design or other sectors have latched onto it quicker than architecture or interiors. Some of it has happened, but it's not happening at the same pace.
It's interesting the different sort of twists and turns, and I think that's looking at the stuff that you've done, you've sort of managed to find a niche all the way along, haven't you? And just
I hate that word niche, but I think we've managed to find a sector or a group of like-minded people to work with.
Yeah.
At their right time or our right time. And I think it's like we were lucky to work in broadcast and post-production when analog was going digital. So that was a massive change for them as an industry. We rode the back of that, doing all the post-production studios in London and then globally. Because we'd done it once or twice, and people then went, "Oh, you've done it. You know what you're doing, and we like what you've done." So, and the other thing is we didn't have a house style, and so therefore you're not going to get the same white box you got last time, but with a new door handle or something. I mean, that's very much a lot of the big architectural studios will not change more than 10 details on a building because their PI insurance won't allow them to do it. So they've already got all the standard details that get replicated on each project, because they've been warranted and checked, and there's no risk.
Yeah, it's a little bit dull, that, isn't it?
Well, it's not dull. Richard Rogers buildings are quite nice.
Well, I suppose saying, I wasn't implying that Richard Rogers buildings were dull, but perhaps if you're creative and you like to sort of mess around and change and adapt and evolve, then that's not the career for you, is it? But something a little bit more dynamic, perhaps.
Yeah, but I think that it's upon all us as designers is what makes you happy, what gets you out of bed every day is you're actually working on something that you think you're adding value or you're getting excitement from, or it's a challenge, or you're bending your mind, or you're learning something new. It's like one of the worst jobs for a year art student was to go in a large office and do toilet detailing for 9 months. Staircases or whatever. And that's just death by, it's horrendous. I mean, the model shop's better than that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just, you have to find something that kind of, client or a sector or something else that changes and keeps you going. I mean, I listened to one of your previous podcasts, I was designing crazy golf courses or something.
Yes.
I thought, well, that's definitely not for me. But I'm not a good golfer. I don't understand golf at all.
I think you could probably do all right at crazy golf.
I don't know.
When we get back, I'll challenge you to a game. But yeah, I mean Zach's work was quite free and unencumbered by style constraints, or it's a bit of fun really within, but actually combined with a very hard-nosed approach to economics, of density and spaces to take the money off the punters, if you like. But so
it's like any of those, it's amazing, those roller rides and all that kind of stuff, how much they cost and how much the return is and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a different world.
Yeah,
it's like casino design or something.
Yeah, there's there's design everywhere, isn't there? I think you'll be designing your ideal equestrian beach resort. I think is that I can see that.
I think I'll be building it by next year.
Building it, yeah.
So I'll be sitting having this out. I don't like sangria either, but I'll be tending my winery and making sure that the construction's happening and having like-minded souls investing with me.
Did you ever think that there was a life? Is there a lifestyle associated with your job that you've crafted, or has it happened?
Are you suggesting I might enjoy the odd lunch?
Well, we've been for lunch a few times, and as I say, that working on the restaurant project was always good because I'm really into my food and drink, and being around that culture is exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's part of European life, really. That's the sad thing of us not being in the EU anymore. Is that as a child, you got brought up traveling. Kind of the age-old thing that any Northern Ireland person will tell you is they've never seen garlic until they arrived in the UK. It's just potatoes and watery this, that, and the other. So then suddenly you got herbs and garlic and lots of other interesting things to cope with. So yeah, it's all about expanding your horizons, enjoying it. If you work in hospitality and you work in a bar as a student, or you work as a waitress or waiter as a student, those are things that are all new to you. So it's very, very enjoyable. I remember vividly being given my first bottle of French cider in Canterbury as a student, going, well, this is the local beer. It's very strange. The local beer was disgusting, but the French cider was very nice. I didn't like warm, frothy beer.
You got a taste for the Breton cider.
The Breton cider was much nicer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you've got to enjoy life, and I think my analogy still comes back to my dinner table. It's like or lunch table. It's about having a discourse with people that you enjoy meeting with and having conversations with. I mean, we were very, very blessed to be in Clerkenwell and have Café du Marché as one of my local restaurants, which always closed at the moment. But I met so many good friends and business acquaintances and business colleagues through there that it's a bit of an institution, but it's a very good Chateaubriand and chips. Pretty simple menu, very nice wine list. But it's a great place to meet people and have conversation.
I think that social side of design, quite important. Really, it's about people.
Well, I think the social side is the welding together of all the common parts. I mean, it's that connection of why you're working with somebody. Why you're working with a banker, why are you working with a lawyer, why are you working with an advertising person or a brand graphics company, why is brand important to somebody? All of those kind of issues, you get them all on one table. Graphics are as important as what the architecture could be for a project solution. The architecture is never the top of the pile. It's a mix of all of this. If you don't get all the parts right, the project doesn't work. It's not a success.
I'd like to thank Ken for taking the time to talk to me. It's really interesting to see his career path from the early days of retail design and how he's moved from sector to sector and developed relationships across a wide range of members of the interior and architecture design community. This openness to collaboration has really helped him get involved in lots of different types of projects. His holistic understanding of the design process and the importance of setting aspirations at the start of a project, economics and sustainability, both in an environmental and economic sense, has made him a really important partner working with developers across London and further afield. I really like his approach to crafting the interiors and his understanding of how materials and surfaces can impact the experience of the users. That's an approach we promote at the University of Plymouth on our interior design course. If you'd like some more information on how to be a kick-ass interior designer, follow the links in the show notes. I'd like to thank Dave Clark from I Am the How for technical support in the setting up of this podcast, Kay Hansen for her planning support and co-hosting for these and our educational podcasts at the University of Plymouth, and Mark Frith for the music. Really like to hear your feedback. If you've got any comments, please get in touch. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.